Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
so yeah, it's interesting because like obviously I play a lot of fast-paced games, and I definitely struggled with the beginning stages of Generations Ultimate when it first came out. And I think part of that is literally just the mental approach and the programming that I'm used to, like playing so many fast games and then switching into a game like that and not really consciously knowing that, okay, you've got to look at it as a game that you just get this slow burn going until it's like really heating up and then boom, you're into the action and you just don't want to put it down, that sort of thing. So,
So, and you're proving a point that we're so conditioned to be fast because we just totally skip intros, everything else.
yeah, exactly. No time for intros when you just want to be at the end boss in the first 5 minutes. So,
Obviously, you know the channel, you know the people. Either get with it or go away.
yeah.
But so on that note, I'm Card Dreamer of D Class,
And I'm Dace from Stonebeak Productions.
and thank you. This is a let's discuss about. I guess more. It's easy to say like game conditioning, so to
Hmm.
speak.
Yeah.
Are we have we become impatient gamers?
Yeah.
Is
And
a good way to put
also, yeah, that plus I think becoming more conscious gamers
it.
so
Yeah.
that we can shift to the appropriate approach for the appropriate game or whichever game is in question. Because I think that is a really important thing that people, like myself included, become more and more aware of as gamers. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we got into this discussion 'cause it was over a specific game, as Dace mentioned. Uh, just talking about Monster Hunter, Orange, Origin, whatever.
Or orange.
uh, and it just Dace is more of the fast-paced gaming variety,
Hmm.
and whereas that's lately where I've gone. In general, I've just never have played a Monster Hunter game prior. So my first experience was World, and it's a total change of pace to me.
Hmm.
And I just was and it brought up the idea like, are we conditioned nowadays, like with the way, especially with the way media is in general nowadays and the way technology is, and we're constantly like, oh, we need a fix here, we need a fix there. Either it's your Twitter or it's YouTube or it's a television show or it's a movie or it's a short. Indie games are actually notorious for being some of the quicker games for completion wise,
Hmm.
and not that that's a bad thing, but between that and everything else, like, so are we? It feels almost like we could be conditioned to not take our time with the game, to not enjoy what the game has to offer. There's just so many going to it. Like, we're just like, okay, let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, which is ironic, like, and interesting because the twist on that would be, especially you. I like the concept and I like playing them. I just don't do them often.
Hmm.
Role playing games where you don't have a choice but to slow down. Like,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
forcing you at a pace,
Yeah.
and yet no problem sitting down playing them. So why is it then when you switch gears, especially for someone like you who plays a Kane and Dead Cells and all, how how is it RPGs are perfectly acceptable to sit down, slow down, and enjoy, but then like a game like Monster Hunter Generations where it really does force you to, like, okay, slow your roll. You ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
Hmm.
Learn the pace.
Yeah,
Why?
I think part of it has to do with like with RPGs it's one thing because you start a story and you start from there and you go with Origins all or Generations. I'm gonna be calling it Origins the whole night. With Generations Ultimate, for instance, like you're starting from scratch even more so than you would if you were just playing an RPG, because like you've just got to do all this learning, and then after all that learning you've got to start collecting all of these little ingredients and materials, resources, you name it, just before you even start feeling like you have a place in the world, sort of thing. It's kind of like there's just that much more work involved. I'll word it that way, I think.
No, I think that's a good. I think that's a good way to put it.
And I will say that I also have never played a Monster Hunter game before Generations. So, um, like I used to play so many RPGs way back. So it's not that I'm not used to that kind of pace, but when it comes to games like crafting, where you're starting and you've got to build everything to be able to then use those things and like progress, that's a whole other kind of slow burn that I don't have that kind of experience with it. So I really like the idea of just shifting my mentality around, because when I think about it, even though I play a lot of fast games, there's something really delicious about the idea of, yeah, I want to sit back and just take something super, super slow and super easy and just have a like a casual time here and there, a couple nights a week or whatever the situation is. And when I think about that, it's like something like Generations Ultimate just seems so much more appealing compared to, let's say, playing Dead Cells and then just jumping into Generations right after a run. Like that would kind of be like a shock to the system in a way. So I think kind of preparing yourself and knowing when and how to play those games is just, yeah, something to figure out or balance. And it's going to be different for each player, of course. Some people won't have an issue whatsoever. But I think, like, for instance, I could be saying, oh, maybe in the winter time where I can just burrow into the couch on an evening and just really take my time with it and just see what I think as I just learn the ropes more and just get into it that way. Like, that's really appealing to me, as opposed to thinking about, yeah, just switching from something fast into that just because I want to like keep at it. But it's never to be an obligation or something to be forced, of course. But I do want to get at some of these games. So
No,
yeah.
I think you worded that pretty well. I mean, actually, really well. I definitely agree with the whole shock to the system thing. It's like,
Hmm.
unless you know whatever fast-paced or hardcore thing you're playing at that moment, like you just like hit that wall. Like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Either it's because you've been doing it for so many hours, or you're just getting frustrated and you need to change a pace, or whatever the case may be. Like, that's the only way I can see something like Generations or the slow burn, as you're putting it, like that is the only way I could see you can switch from one to the other. But then to
Hmm.
go, but on the flip side, to go from, oh my gosh, that was such an amazing run. Oh, that was awesome, awesome. Let's try this. And you're like, come on, quicker. Come on,
Yeah,
I still got the
exactly.
adrenaline going. Come on.
Yeah, because there isn't that immediate like sequence of events happening, and like it's just much more drawn out, much more relaxed compared to something like Dead Cells is a perfect example because I play it fast and it's just action packed every step of the way. So it's great for just comparing to something where like you're running through an environment, you're like maybe picking off a creature here, a creature there, or maybe you're just ignoring them and just roaming and sightseeing and collecting things and just exploring and immersing yourself in the world more so than you will when the focus is um, surviving and just fighting an enemy every 3 steps you take.
No, yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is not the detract for people who like Monster Hunter. I'm actually
Hmm.
enviable of people who can get into slower games like that, that are a little more of the grind, that are more take your time, that are collect yourself and go out and do this.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I mean, I'm definitely not taking away from that. In fact, I actually wish I could be like that, because the way Monster Hunter Generations is really, and World to a degree, the way they're set up is to make you feel like every time you conquer a new monster, it's not like okay, you're in the thick of the action. It's you're meant to feel like this was an accomplishment, this was an achievement,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Definitely.
and I think that's cool. Like, and then you eventually go back, and those monsters are not even a challenge anymore, and you just laugh, and but you earn that along the way. It always seems balanced,
Sure. Yeah.
and but on the flip side, now I'm curious if that, because of how we are as a society, is that affect? Do you feel like that's affecting game development as a whole? Because now I can use Monster Hunter World as a way of going, well, they did the series for so long, and it almost seems like, okay, we reached the limit of what our fan base is. How do we appeal to something broader? So they made it quicker, as far as, and easier to access. Like, it's quicker paced, you get right into the action. um, they took away a lot of things that slow you down, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seemed like one could make an argument that they said, we need to make speed, we need to step this up and dumb it down for people.
Yeah, like I'm not so sure about dumbing it down, but I think maybe balancing it in like my thing with generations, for instance, is like there are just so many starting quests just to learn how to play the game. And I feel at this point, because it's been so long since I last played it, I don't even remember what the controls are. I don't remember what I was doing. Um, and in some ways, it's kind of like intimidating almost. And I think so. If they were gonna like, maybe I'll use the word streamline. If they were to have the basics taught to you in such a way so that you're immediately in the action and you're learning these things, as opposed to like, oh, here, go on this single quest where you will learn this one thing, and then, oh, okay, go into this next quest where you will learn this one thing. Like, it's just a very drawn out and unnecessary approach, in my opinion. So I don't think like dumbing it down really enters into it, in my opinion, but just getting more creative with how they can be a little more fluid with how they teach the same things, if that makes sense.
No, that, yeah, that's fair. Dumbing down was probably a poor choice of words. I simplified or
Yeah, for
streamlined
sure.
would be a
Yeah. No, that makes total sense.
better way to put it. Because, like, I mean, even the combat in Generations or in the older ones versus, say, World is different, in the sense, like, in those older games you can't move while you drink potions. You can't move while you, I think, unless you're a specific class or have an ability or something. But
Hmm.
in general, you can't move. You have to stand there and do it. Whereas in Worlds, you can move around.
Yeah.
So it's even strategic when you can drink a potion. So the older, so like Generations is way more strategic. So you just can't willy nilly drink when you need to heal. You've got to
Hmm.
strategize how you're going to attack, because you need to know, because now you need to focus on, I can only attack at this time because I got to keep my distance if I need to heal and do this.
Exactly.
Whereas in World, you can be a little more headstrong and just go in on go, I'm going to hit you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'll just heal on my when I run around you in circles.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so and it's neat that we're having this discussion now with the expansion for Hunter, or for Monster Hunter World, coming out in a week, but which I am super excited for, and hopefully I can at least stream once while
Mm,
it's new. But
that'll be great. And that actually brings me to another point that I wanted to add is I think for certain games, it's also important to like, or at least as a content creator, someone who streams and does YouTube videos, I think it's important to kind of be aware of the potential for, oh, what games might be more suitable for streams if I'm not playing it hardcore on my own. And so when I was watching your Generations video earlier tonight, that just really struck me because I was like thinking to myself, oh man, if I get back into Generations myself, this would be perfect for streaming for just like a casual chill night where Like I don't have to focus on crazy stuff happening in the game. I can just sit back, chat with the community, my friends, and all the people who are there, and still be learning the game that way. So I think that's another really important thing to be aware of for those who don't just play games on their own by themselves all the time. And, or it could be something else entirely, like let's say if you game with a buddy or whatever the case is, maybe it's the type of game where like, oh hey, like do you feel like just like chilling and we go through this because I want to learn it, and it's just more of a very laid back approach instead of thinking like, oh, I got to boot it up and then I've got to like be learning all these things and paying so much attention. Because like I think if you kind of just roam around and do things anyway, you're going to eventually learn the ropes that way too. So again, it
True.
comes back to the whole just how you approach it, and yeah, shifting that mentality.
Now, no, I totally agree. So no, I know we're using Monster Hunter as a good example. But so are there other games that you found yourself, or other genres or franchises that you've thought you would be interested or looked interesting, but then lately have had the same effect? Like, I don't have time for this, or this is too slow for me. Like, can you name something else that you found yourself having a similar feeling towards now that maybe you're like Monster Hunter, you're kind of going, maybe I do need to go back and reapproach this.
Um, to be honest, there isn't a whole lot, mainly because like most of the time I'm very selective about what I start, and usually what I start is something that I'll finish not too long after starting it. And um, because of that, um, just overall sense of, okay, I want to be very like careful about what I boot up in the first place. Have stayed away from longer games with kind of a grind vibe to them. The only other thing I would really say is like Octopath Traveler. I got that
Mm.
the moment it came out, and I have barely put any time into it. I think maybe 30 hours. Um, but it's just, there's something about it. Like every time I boot it up, I feel like there's nothing that my party is strong enough to do. And like going up against monsters and stuff like this is just like such a chore that I have kind of lost interest a few times when I have had that spark of interest. I've gone to it and then I've come away again and been like, oh, like it's such a grind. It's such a chore getting anything accomplished when I do play. Yet at the same time, like it's just an incredibly gorgeous looking game, and I love the idea. I love the world, the characters, and everything about it. So there's that part of me that still really wants to get back at it, but there's just that sense of like, oh, it's just so slow though.
I think that sounds like me almost with every RPG. Like, why aren't I level 100 yet? I've played for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I no, I would definitely say RPGs are, as much as I love the different ones, I'm really bad at staying focused with them, just because there are quicker, more accessible games.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like, it really has to do something to catch my eye
Yeah,
or to
for
catch
sure.
my attention. Like Dragon Age, especially the first one. Like, I
Hmm.
can't explain it. Like, that game, like I said, it's one of the few that I, in this day and age, that I made the time to replay in spite of all the games I have. Like, and I didn't just replay it once or twice. Every time a new DLC that added something to a story came out, I played the whole game.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that before actually, and that's pretty remarkable, and it says a lot about just how awesome the game must be for you anyway. Like obviously not everyone's going to have that kind of connection to that game in particular, but
Right.
I'm sure there are games like that for everyone where no matter how many times they've played it, no matter how many new games are coming out or awesome games they have on the go, they will easily devote the time for that one or two games that are just like some of their top favorites, and there's just something about being in that world that they love so much that they don't mind revisiting and just doing everything all over again. I totally hear that. That's like
Exactly.
me and Link's Awakening. I could play that game like every year or even multiple times a year. Like it doesn't matter. It's always just so good going through that game again. Not that that's even a long one compared to yeah, other games, but that's just as a very quick example that came to mind.
No, that's fair. And even like as much as I love Link's Awakening, and that will always be tied for first place with the Link to the Past. Like,
Hmm.
but I
Totally.
played them so much when they were new that I feel like I don't have the desire to go back. Now, obviously, the remake is going to be a totally different thing
Yo,
because that's
yeah,
a remake.
totally. Yeah, that's
But
gonna be amazing.
to do the original again, like I didn't just play it once or twice and that was it. Like when I had them and they were new and they were in my collection and the system was still prevalent, I must have beat them at least a couple like dozens of times.
Oh my goodness.
Like Zelda, like A Link to the Past, I probably beat at least 10 times.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy, man.
I I mean it because it was just so I love that game.
Hmm.
A Link's Awakening, I probably beat realistically maybe 5, 6 times.
Sure.
Which I mean, it's not dozens, but still, that do that within like the span of a year or two. That's plenty for
Oh yeah,
me.
absolutely.
So, but like Dragon Age, and it's a role player. I mean, Dragon Age is a role player. Maybe a hair simplified, but from a traditional role player. But I mean, yeah, like that's one of the few in the modern times I put that same kind of energy into, just because yeah, I love the story. It's one of those where you're given choice by because it's made by BioWare and they're famous for it. But it's one of their games where you're presented with options and choices. Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And it changes the story as you go.
Sure.
So every I mean, every playthrough is potentially a different, even though the overall general arc of the story is going to be the same.
Hmm.
The sides you're on, the nuances of how you got from point A to point B, all those things are going to be different. So it's a different experience every time.
Definitely.
And I loved every experience, even from playing as you know, a hard-headed jerk to just being like the ultimate suave flirt with every single person that came along hero.
Yeah.
No hint as to what I played as, but
Yeah, really.
and oh man, I was so horrible in that game. I was so bad with the flirting. I literally flirted until I had the option of sleeping with every character, and I slept with it and got as far as I could with everyone before the game forced me to choose.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, but I don't want to choose. I I like being just um, the man whore.
Yeah, all over the place.
I was proud of it. Hey, I mean, I don't understand. They didn't complain the whole time knowing I was flirting. Why worry about it now? But anyway, I'm digressing. But I mean, but it's interesting. Like, but when I try to do other role players, they're fun. Don't get me wrong. I love role players, but then it's like that. Sometimes that grind hits or that time where you got to go out and all right, I got to level up my character before I can go to the next step.
Hmm.
That hits, and then I'm like, what's over in this game?
Yeah.
So, go
And
ahead.
I think just to add to that, I think that's why it's so important to just have like to be as mindful of when and where to play a game as possible. Because when I think about it, like let's use Lunar Silver Star Story as an example. Like I started that Let's Play months and months and months ago, and boom, out of nowhere, or seemingly nowhere, I'm just back into it recording every day. Like I'm right at the end of the game now. And I think part of something else that's important to me anyway, and I would encourage others who maybe have an interest in this topic or have noticed the same sorts of trends within themselves, maybe to just be thinking like it's okay to not finish an RPG in the first week or two that you start it. I think maybe part
Tell
of
that
it,
to little CD.
yeah, well, yeah, that's a special case. But I think part of the struggle that we feel is something that perhaps we're creating for ourselves by thinking or like bringing this sense of expectation or obligation that like, oh, now that I've started it, it has to be done within the month. When there's no one saying that. Like if I start a new RPG tomorrow, for instance, like I could be playing that a year from now and just booting it up. It's just a matter of like working away at it at its own pace instead of thinking like it has to be done. And it's not to be like, oh, great, you can just be lazy with it and just always choose not to play that and choose other things instead. But balancing uh, two things, staying with it because you want to beat it, but knowing that it's okay to pace something out a little longer when it is a longer game and there are those moments with grind or slow whatever sections. Like I think it's yeah, that's just another thing I want to throw out there.
No, and I would totally agree with that. I think, though, to be fair, part of uh, the situation with you was your. It wasn't just the game at the time, because there was.
Hmm.
I think you had more than one RPG going at the time.
It's
Um,
true.
but in which in and of itself can be daunting,
Yeah.
but your your tastes or preferences at the time and how for your channel was going through changes too, or what you
Yeah.
wanted to focus on. So
Hmm.
that kind, all those things I think culminated in in what happened. But at the same time, maybe you maybe could that play in because you went from RPGs and Let's Plays to Let's or not Let's yeah you went to Let's Plays, RPGs, things like that to first looks
Hmm.
and shmups and
Absolutely.
dead cells, dead cells, dead cells,
Oh
dead
yeah.
cells,
Every
and
day.
yeah. So I mean, but you went like to the quicker games real quick because
Hmm.
there was like, and granted, we had a lot of things going on like in the Discord, which I can post a link to in the description below for a link to the Dan in Indie Drop. But I mean, we were getting a new influx of, we've been getting a new influx of actually of other content creators, especially streamers. That was
Hmm.
another thing. You got into streaming hardcore, and you've been doing really successful with that. Um, so you're like your time availability has also dwindled, so to speak. Or
Hmm.
so I
Or
just thought that was
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially just like I know now as of the last week or so, I've been getting back to watching YouTube videos because we've talked about that and all that stuff. Um, and I think it really boils down to what you're feeling, what you choose to devote your time to. Because like at the end of the day, in terms of your game time, you have that whole chunk, whether it's an hour or 10 hours or like whatever the case is, like you can play anything you want, but if you're just really not feeling something, you're not going to want to play that sort of thing. So I've definitely gone through shifts since starting my YouTube channel, since getting a Switch way, way before that. So it's neat to see these changes and the growth and how that affects certain things, or just what I sway towards at certain times, and then I will withdraw from it and get back to like other things. Um, and yeah, it's interesting to see that kind of flow happening. But I can say it's really refreshing getting back to um, yeah, watching your Let's Play stuff as well, and just getting back to my own projects that have kind of been on the back burner while I was more focused on streaming and the faster games and that sort of thing. So it's really exciting to me, to be honest.
No, I agree. It's part of the pros and cons that I like with when I love watching about your channel is like between what gets discussed and thrown back and forth in the Discord or ideas that you've asked me about or
Mhm.
and then watching the channel go like just grow rapidly. Like, and dude, you pump out videos pretty decently, and which is awesome. Like, and there's such a blast. But like, it's fun because more than the content, it's like the individual videos themselves. Like, okay, this is cool. This is a shmup video. Oh man, this particular game looks awesome. It's a roller coaster ride just to go. Is it still a shmup today?
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
Like, are we dead cells? Are we dead cells? For a little bit, you were starting to like. It was like, okay, so we know this is gonna be dead cells. Okay, okay, he's
Yeah,
streaming. We know it's dead cells. Okay,
exactly.
so and then but before and then after that, you're like, you never knew you don't know what you're gonna get. Period. You don't
Hmm.
know if it's a first look, a let's play, a review. Um, you just don't even know if it's still a shmup. Like, I know you want to dedicate Sundays to it, but now that's even going to be random as to how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's just it's really awesome. But at the same time, like, I could see someone coming in like, just pick something. I don't know where to go with this.
Yeah.
But no, but I think that really is actually the fun. I think that's why you do really well, is because like if it's indie, pretty much it's on your channel.
Absolutely. And
And
it's interesting because when I did that like solid month of nothing but shmup videos, like a new one every day, it seemed, um, I gained quite a lot of new subscribers, and I've been, some of them have been dropping, or well, I'm not sure who exactly, but it's been neat because since I've started back to like a variety of content, I've noticed some numbers have dropped. And it's just neat because I think for some people it might be a matter of like, oh, like, yeah, man, this guy is like all about shmups, like that's all he does. And then out of nowhere, it's just like, oh, what is this
Mega
other
Man,
non-shmup game? Like, like
Mega
it's
Man
just, it's,
11. That's not a shmup.
yeah, really, like all these different things that are suddenly thrown into the mix for the newcomers, and they're just not aware of how the channel shifts from time to time. So maybe that's it. Who knows? But I do like what you brought up about just like never knowing what it's going to be. And I like when it's in that state because I don't like it's it's tricky because like if I'm really into a certain game and I just want to be recording every possible thing and like nothing else, and of course I'm going to do that, but at the same time there's something really exciting knowing that I can kind of have that intrigue there when I am in the mode of more variety because then it's more exciting for you guys to just yeah, whether it's going to be this awesome shmup that I just got and I'm checking it out for the first time and sharing all my thoughts, or something that I've had for ages which I haven't done content on and I'm finally getting around to it. Like it's just there's so much excitement all across the board. So yeah, that's it's just
No, that's
refreshing to
fair.
hear it.
So, do you find being a content creator uh, also affects what you have the patience to play or not play? Or
Hmm.
does the playing games come first and the content creation part revolves around that?
I think it's kind of like a back and forth in a sense because if something's coming out for the first time and I just happen to be interested in it, then I want to do a first look, for instance. I don't want to just play it myself and then do something on it later. So I think for certain things, they're just kind of geared towards having certain types of videos made or streaming or whatever the case is. As for my own game time, that's tricky to say too. Most of the time, I don't actually play, like these days anyway, I don't actually play a ton unless I'm recording. And that could just be because I'm getting back into uh, like the regular YouTube videos. So obviously, there's a lot of stuff that I want to get caught up on and that I want to be pumping out. So a lot of my game time is just recording. So I'm sure that answers the question, but I think it kind of shifts from time to time depending on what's on the go and what games are coming out, what games I'm most excited about playing or getting back into. I think it's always going to be something that fluctuates when it comes to people who create content. But what would you say for yourself?
So for myself, I do feel like I don't know if it limits my patience as far as I don't know, but I don't know if it limits my patience as far as the grindier games goes per se. I
Mhm.
do find content being a content creator uh, has been a little more controlling or dictating in general of what I play. But I also have found my lifestyle right now with the way things are has been a little more influential as well. Like I
Mhm.
don't feel like I have the time to get into anything really long. Well, let me rephrase that. So what I find interesting is that I could see being able to do role players because I think you brought up a really good point. You don't have to do them all in one sitting. You don't have to beat them in a week.
Mhm.
Um, I could see myself doing a role playing game and then just here and there. But something like Monster Hunter Generations, for some reason, with the time allotted to me, I don't see me jumping to it.
Yeah.
And for that reason, like if I don't mind stopping and going, but I don't see me being consistent with it,
Mhm.
which I think would throw off how well I even did in the game.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that's totally fair. And I think for Generations Ultimate specifically, unless you're going to memorize how to do all the different like actions, like it's a little more than what jumping back into an RPG would require. Like for instance, if you jumped into Battle Chasers again, which has probably been a long time since you last played that, like you'd
yes.
probably not have too much of a struggle. But if you went, let's say, 8 months or whatever the case would be, um, with Generations, for instance, like that would probably just be like, oh, well, okay, like how do I do this? How do I do that? I think it would just be a little more of a struggle to get back up to speed with that sort of stuff, unless you're just
Totally.
really, really versed with those types of games, and then you might not have an issue. But of course, I'm not experienced with that kind of stuff. So for me, I think that's part of why I came away from it and why it's been so long since I've played that game.
I think that's a very good assessment. Yeah, and even with RPGs like even Battle Chasers, I probably would struggle for those probably for the first like round or two, but
Hmm.
I mean, there's only so many things you can do in a role playing game. There's only a couple of different buttons, so it's not like it's
Yeah,
hard pressed. Whereas Monster Hunter, it's a whole slew of things that you've got to sit there and keep in mind, figure out how to do, figure out when, figure out where, and then it's a game you're not even familiar with on top of it.
yeah, exactly.
So no, I that's a very good point. Um, I do find like being a content creator also prevents me from playing certain games that normally I probably would have jumped into, like role playing games, because I was doing like the once a week streaming where every stream was a focus on a new role player because I felt like doing a let's play for me is on a role playing game is just too long.
Yeah,
In general, for a video series, I think I just feel like that's hard. It's a hard press to keep people focused on watching the same game that long,
yeah,
um, especially if you're trying to keep videos down to a certain size.
for sure. And I think just to add to that, like I think again, it's one of those things like you can't like it's going to be so different for each person. For instance, if you were playing like a 20 part RPG and I was interested in it, or like just based on our relationship, I like it wouldn't really matter what you were playing. Like as long as it's the kind of thing that I can have on while I'm doing other things, I think that's great too. Like the way I view my videos isn't always like, oh, this is gonna captivate everyone every second of it. Like sometimes people just they like what I do or they know me and they want to support me and they've got their own things on the go and so they are fine to just like have this kind of stuff going on in the background or beside them while they're doing other things, and that's great too.
No, I, no, I can totally get that. And
But
yeah, I can't say there aren't videos that I haven't done that way. I put them on the background.
yeah, but that's not to say or discount what you're getting at because like at the same time, I feel like yeah, I like after I finish Lunar, I want to be a little more selective about what RPGs I do Let's Plays of. Like there are some that right now I think to myself, oh, that would be so cool, but I'm also asking myself, okay, do I really want to make a full project of it, or do I just want to showcase the first part of it and then maybe just play it on my own, stream it occasionally, that sort of thing, so that it's not this huge project that has been initiated just because like, oh, I'm excited about this new RPG and I want to share the whole experience, but maybe people don't need that whole experience. Maybe just a little sample. Like when you were streaming different RPGs, like I think that was great. I personally want to see more of some of those ones you were playing, but at the same time, like not everyone is going to want to watch or sit through the entire thing. Like you, yeah, sure you can cut stuff out, like I have done with Lunar. Pretty much all the battles, except for boss fights and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't change the fact that some people are going to be totally fine with content no matter what it is, and then others are going to want that very focused and specific something. And if it's not that, then it's a lot of effort putting a let's play up just for it to not be seen.
Oh, trust me, Pokemon Go has taught me that well, or Pokemon Let's Go, I should say. Yeah. No, I totally get that, and I mean that's something we can discuss after. That's a whole different. Let's
A whole
discuss,
different
but
topic, yeah, for sure.
no, I like, yeah, I don't even start games because I feel like everything, like certain ones, like oh man, I want to share this. Oh man, I want to share something about this. I want to start that. So then it limits my, and then I get frustrated. So it's like, well, I don't feel like putting effort into anything right now. What can I play casually?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think we're kind of reaching the end of the conversation or discussion, and it
Hmm.
so far that I definitely do feel like today's uh, between what games are, and you know, actually, there's one more thing I want to bring up. Like if you really mobile gaming has really incentive incentivize or whatever the word is, has really made it prominent to be a quick fix.
Absolutely.
I mean, and not only are they quick fixes that you can just play for 10, 15 minutes here and there and get your fix, the way a lot of them are pay to win, now it's you just even quicker go through it.
Hmm.
So I think even mobile gaming has definitely had an influence on what people do and don't have time for,
Yeah. And
or patience.
yeah, I can agree with that, though I can also say that I have like next to no experience with mobile gaming because I don't do games on my phone like at all, but I can see exactly yeah, the truth behind what you're saying because like it's just very, very convenient. Everyone has their phone on them, so of course, if they can just boot up a game in seconds and then be playing for a few minutes, that is just that fits any window of opportunity pretty much in between activities or whatever the case is. So
No,
it just
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
contributes towards the whole like fast paced, quick fix sort of mentality.
I totally agree. So I guess that just leaves it to everybody who's like watching or listening. Like, how do you feel about games? Like, leave your comments down below. What do you find yourself not having the patience like you once did for games back then? You know,
Mhm.
whether it's something like Monster Hunter or even just replaying games in general. Like, I don't have time for this. I got this, one and done. And or do you find yourself like, no, I'm making the time to sit down? I know again, there's hardcore Monster Hunter game players out there, but um, yeah. So I want to thank you for being a part of the discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, no problem. Glad we could wing this one.
Yeah, definitely.
This was a cool little. That's right, everybody. We winged this. This was totally impromptu.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sure it feels that way, but that's the best kind.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, let's discuss it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Uh, but yeah, leave your comments down below, like and subscribe. Again, thank you, Dace of Stonebeak Productions. I will definitely put your links down below to your
Perfect.
Twitch and your main channel.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. And until next time, have a good one.
See you, everybody.
Now, the only thing is like, how do we focus the conversation? Like, what is it like the angle? We know we were talking about fast versus slow.
We could maybe just warm up the audience by saying how we got onto the topic, which was, of course, Monster Hunter. Is it Origin Ultimate or Origins Ultimate?
Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate.
Generations. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Don't even know what game we're talking about.
That's fine.
Doesn't even exist.
Oh man.
Yeah, that Origins one that came out